Hello, podcast listeners. This is Steve Vancore with the inaugural edition of the Florida Public Powercast, a production of the Florida Municipal Electric Association. And our guest, of course, is the boss lady herself, Amy Zubaly, who is just an amazing guest. And we cover, because this is the first one, we cover a lot of territory, everything from who is FMEA, why do they succeed, and what is the unifying factor that brings all of the FME members together. We're going to touch on other subjects about challenges and the future of FMEA and public power in Florida. It's an inaugural episode, a lot of energy, a lot of good stuff. I think you're going to love this. Thanks for listening. Greetings, I'm Steve Vancore, and this is the Florida Public Powercast, a production of the Florida Municipal Electric Association. Each episode, we sit down with leaders and experts from Florida's public power communities to explore issues, innovations, and the people shaping our state's energy future. Well, this is the inaugural episode, so we have our Executive Director, Amy Zubaly. Amy.
It is my pleasure to be here. I am really excited about this.
I am too. I know this has been a long time in the coming. You've been giving a lot of thought to this, and I'm really excited about it because I think this is, as you do, very needed for your members and others who want to understand and learn more about this. But before we get into the subject of some of the challenges, give me a one-on-one on what is FMEA.
Yeah, great. That's easy question there, right? So FMEA represents the 33 city-owned or public power utilities in the state of Florida. So a quick little electric industry lesson for those that may not really be aware. 3 different types of electric utilities in Florida. The private utilities or investor-owned utilities, IOUs, I may sometimes say. Florida Power and Light, Duke Energy, those are the private sectors. Then there's electric cooperatives that serve the more rural community. FMEA represents the city-owned electric utilities. There's 33 of them in the state of Florida, and the association serves as a mutual aid coordinator for our members. We are the advocacy people, so we do both the state and federal advocacy and follow the legislature and Congress very closely. We also do numerous roundtables, networking events, conferences, workshops, forums, opportunities for our members to get together, share best practices, share ideas, lessons learned, things like that.
So it's one part education, ongoing education for members so they can learn from each other, swap information, share information, and do a better job at what they do. The other part is advocacy to make sure your views, the views of your members are adequately represented both in the state level and in Washington.
That's right. We're the voice of Florida Public Power, and so we're unified as one voice under FMEA.
Does some of that advocacy go down to the local level, county or city work as well?
Not necessarily. That we are all about local control with our members, and so those local issues tend to stay with our members at the local level, unless it's something that they need us to come and speak to their local governing body on. That's more of a statewide impact, but they need that reinforcement at the local level.
And I would imagine a lot of that is dealt with through your education arm, where if City A is having an issue with their local government, but hey, City C says, we've had a similar issue. Let us tell you how we resolved it.
Absolutely.
That's where the education comes
in.
But
absolutely.
You're not before a city council advocating on behalf of the association.
Not often.
Okay.
We go to before those city councils and we present awards to our members and we talk about the good work that we've done within our membership or that local utility has done, or we'll go to the city councils and we'll present presentations on the state legislature or Congress or things that they need to be aware of that we can have that voice to tell them about.
So why a podcast?
Why a podcast? We wanted an opportunity to be able to elevate the voices of our member utilities and the people that are behind the scenes, rather than just them keeping the lights on. They have so many more stories to tell. We do a quarterly magazine, Relay Magazine. And it's great. And we run articles in our magazine that you can read about, little things that our utilities are doing, or maybe there's an article that's focusing on something that 3 utilities are doing. But that's it. It's the stories ends, and we want to be able to dive a little bit farther into what our members are doing, to hear their voices, to be able to take these complex utility issues and kind of narrow them down into tangible things and learn from them and share these ideas and lessons across to other utilities so others can learn what they're doing. I think it's an opportunity to help support workforce development so people can hear about what is going on these utilities and garner more talent that may not know about what we're doing.
If I'm driving down the road, I remember one time talking to a client and he was like, well, I don't want to do these. Two partners, one didn't want to do the news clips anymore. The other one said, I said, why not? He goes, well, people are talking about it at the water cooler. And the other partner said, well, isn't that what we want? We want them talking about our issues and our things. And it seems to me if I'm driving to work in the morning and I'm working for one of these utilities, or I'm a young analyst or whatever position I have, and I could listen to this, I could be listening to any podcast. I could be listening to, as we know, there's 80 million out there. If I'm listening to the FMEA podcast, I'm learning a little bit more about my trade. And in that regard, do you see the podcast as I'm asking this, and I see it as three parts. One part, education, right? So we'll cover topics that are up and coming. Maybe a new law gets enacted. How do you deal with that new law? What do you learn from that new law? It's another way to learn. One part, advocacy, maybe empowering our members to say, hey, let's stand up for this or that. And then one part, networking. So that some members will hear from a CEO of another or somebody who works with utility A, utility B, utility C. And go, oh, I heard from Joe Smith yesterday. Joe Smith shared that, and getting to know each other as well. And that's harder to do in a magazine, right? Because you don't really get to hear someone's voice and what they're saying and what they're passionate about. Because we'll sometimes delve into non-technical aspects of it as well.
Right. I would also add on that, it's a great, I think, educational opportunity, particularly maybe for policymakers that have a lot of things that they're having to manage within their city as either an elected commissioner or a governing board member for some of our utilities. And, you don't have necessarily time to sit down and read a magazine, but you can listen to a podcast and you can learn about the industry because it's so critically important to our communities that we serve. And it's just an opportunity for those policymakers to learn a little bit more about that little gem that they've got within their community of public power.
And what I love about these technical podcasts is we can sometimes deep dive. What are some of the new challenges of mutual aid? What are some of the new challenges of bringing in solar, if there's a new grant program? And we could deep dive into some of those more technical areas. That, to me, is one of the things I'm really looking forward to as your host.
Yep, absolutely.
So let's get into the subject itself, because I know your members are probably like, all right, give me some meat. From your vantage point, Amy, what are some of the challenges facing municipal utilities right now?
I will, great question. And I will take that those challenges that I'm going to talk about are not just unique to public power. I think that the electric utility industry as a whole are facing a lot of challenges right now, whether it be continued growth within our state. Our state is organically growing by leaps and bounds.
I think we're netting 1,000 people a day.
So a little fun fact, I'm going to give a shout out to Kissimmee Utility Authority. Today, they issued a press release, and today is December 16th when we're recording this. Today, they issued a release that they just got their 100th customer. I think when I started at FMEA, 100,000th customer. When I started at FMEA in 1940 or 1999, they had about 40,000 customers. So 26 years, they've grown about 60,000 customers.
Wow.
And just today, they hit that 100,000
They've grown
mark.
by 150%.
So congrats to KUA, but we're seeing these, growth in the state, all across the state.
So one challenge is keeping up with the growth.
Keeping up with the growth, making sure our customers have affordable, reliable power, and that we have the generation to serve them. There's a lot of technological changes that are going on. And, there's a lot of policy changes, both at the state and federal government. And so being able to provide affordable and reliable power is our bottom line.
Yeah.
And that's what our members want to do.
What kind of policy changes are you looking at that are challenged? Well, that have been implemented that are challenging your members?
It's making sure that policies continue to be updated going forward that work for us. So let's take nuclear energy right now. Florida is a state that is a little bit limited on fuel resources. We are very heavily dependent on natural gas.
Yeah.
We're also a peninsula state. And so we only connect to the other states by the northern part of the state. So we don't have transmission ties on our side borders, right? So we have very limited connections to the United States to bring power inside and outside of Florida.
Oh my gosh, I never thought of it. If you're Arkansas, you could be bringing in power from Texas, Louisiana.
All over the place,
okay,
right?
Yeah.
And so we're very resource constrained. We have pipelines and we're very heavily dependent on natural gas. And we love natural gas and it's a very affordable, reliable fuel source for our members. Looking forward to this next stage of nuclear, there's a lot of conversations going on with nuclear. There's also a lot of permitting processes that have to go on with that. So we're looking at permitting reform right now and how can we speed up maybe the next stage of nuclear, small modular reactors. Our members as municipal utilities are not going to go out and build a large scale nuclear power plant. We can't do that.
Right.
It's just, but we can be partners in that process. If there's going to be a new large-scale power plant coming online, I don't know if there will be, but there's possibilities. We have some in the state of Florida. Maybe we can be a partner with that.
Let me ask you a question. If there's a regional nuclear facility being built, can that partnership be one part private, one part co-op, one part city-owned?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And those already exist.
Okay.
So we own very small pieces of power plant in Florida. St. Lucie, we have very small ownership of that. But then these small modular reactors that we're waiting to see how this technology develops. I'd say it's probably still 8 to 10 years down the line, but they're going to be smaller in scale, a smaller footprint. Maybe there'll be a viability for our members to do on our own. I don't know. But as a state and within the industry, we need reforms on the permitting to make these happen and become more viable.
What's interesting to me about nuclear power is it's like if someone goes to the doctor and they come back and they have a mild form of cancer, just using the C word flips people out for a good reason. The N word here,
right?
Nuclear, scares the heck out of people when coal has all kinds of negative ramifications, from the danger to the workers to the dangers to the environment. Natural gas is fine for us as long as we're piping it in. Of course, fracking in Florida would be a disaster.
Hurricane doesn't come through in the Gulf and knock out the pipelines.
Yeah, and you couldn't really frack in Florida because of our harsh topography. So each one has its advantages and its disadvantages, right? And to me, the advantages of nuclear power, and I'm not certainly a scientist and highly schooled in this, but when you see how much nuclear power is being used safely by other countries, you're like, guys, can we just stop the stigma and move forward with it? So I, for one, would be enthusiastically love to see this moving forward. And it distresses me a little bit to hear you say it's at least a decade before we generate 1 kilowatt of power from a nuclear power plant.
I'm hoping that it that progresses and there is a lot of interest out there, right? And I think that the younger generation are seeing nuclear energy as a more viable, reliable source of power, and it's clean.
Yeah.
Right? It's
if you care about global warming, if that's your thing, this is the answer, guys. It's truly not going to add 1 carbon to the atmosphere. And I get it. What do you do with the spent rods? What do you do with the spent coal? What do you all these things have downsides.
They'll figure it out. Yeah.
Right. We want heat in our house at this time of year. We want air conditioning in the summer. But what other challenge? So growth is challenge number 1.
Growth is challenging. Fuel sources, that affordable, reliable, dependable power we need to have. I would also say that there's a lot of technology changes going on. We're living in a world of AI. Everything is AI. AI needs these data centers, massive amounts of power to store and run all of this artificial intelligence. But we don't want to be bringing in all of these data centers into our state, into our service territories, and having to increase our fuel and our power supply to fuel them on the backs of our customers. We don't want our customers' rates and affordability and reliability to be jeopardized while we're trying to manage this growth of these data centers.
I liken these data centers, which, yes, as a heavy user of both AI and other technologies, I get it. We need the power to fuel these things. I view it, Amy, as your hungry teenage son comes home from college and eats all your food. And you're like, listen, honey, you're welcome to have everything in the refrigerator, but not at the expense of your younger siblings,
Yeah.
And I think what you're saying is if I'm a city-owned utility and I said, well, we can bring a data center here, we could generate a lot of good revenue for our community, jobs, et cetera, but we can't do so at the expense of everybody else. So you have to build up corresponding infrastructure.
Yeah. And the existing customers shouldn't be paying for that in order to support that data center that's coming in, right? They have to be able to, they need more generation. Let that data center manage that cost, and we're going to keep our customers whole because we want to make sure that their rates are not impacted because we're growing, right? Go back to that first challenge. We're growing by leaps and bounds. And so while today we may have some excess power, 5 years from now, we may not. We may need that for our own growth. And so that's, we want to make sure that we're keeping our customers in mind and all of that. We're not jeopardizing the affordability, and we're not having to change our rates to support that.
And it's interesting, Amy, because the way I view the growth of 1,000 people a day coming into the state, and that's, by the way, coming and going, it's net about 1,000. I looked at the census thing a couple of days ago. I was like, wow, it's still at 1,000. And but the population, they're coming in one person at a time, so to speak. Well, these data centers are these huge towers of energy that, are it's a different part of the formula. One's systemic, one's like almost cataclysmic, right? Because it could suck up a huge amount if your city commission goes ahead. And I hadn't thought about this. If the city commission, happily says, "Oh, we're going to get a data center. We're all excited." The utilities raising their hand, going, "Whoa! We're going to need to build another power plant to generate enough fuel for that. That's going to take you 4 to 5 years. You can't just plop. You can plop down an Amazon distribution center anywhere, right?
But not a data center, right?
Not a data center, because you're going to need power you're going to need another power center.
We don't want our customers to be paying for that, right? Their bills shouldn't be going up to pay for that. So let the data centers work with us, and they can, manage that power supply. We want that economic development, but we just don't want it to be on the backs of our customers.
When their market cap is $4 trillion, they can afford to pay for their own power.
That's right.
What are the challenges? Those are good ones. So growth, and then the spiked growth in the data centers, which we need, and we're going to demand those centers.
Yeah. I think challenges as well. We had a really nice break this year.
I was about to say, we're not talking about people. We're not talking about hurricanes.
On hurricanes, but we know they're going to happen again. So this year was the first year in 10 years we didn't have a hurricane that made landfall in the United States. It was also the second year ever that there were 3 Category 5 hurricanes that were formed. The only other time, there was 1 year that there were 4, and that was in 2005. That was Katrina, that was Wilma. But beyond that, there's never been 3 or 4 until this year. There's only been 2 formed. So we could have had 3 Category 5 hurricanes. So even though we didn't have a hurricane, they were out there, and we got very lucky. But that's a challenge that we have to continue to be prepared, be ready for this, continue to make investments into our infrastructure, to harden our resources, to make us less prone to outages, and to be able to, what outages we do have, restore faster.
And I'm obviously in the communications business, and what I worry about it is, listen, I'm very grateful we had no hurricanes come, and I'm especially grateful for the people of Taylor County, which had 3 and 13 months last cycle. And what I do worry about is now suddenly people will start to become complacent again. And I know complacency is a death knell, literally, for the people who don't leave, but also for a utility that's trying to repower a community, and you have people who will stay behind. And I thought Rick Scott, while he was governor, did a great job of elevating the communications, the conversations about get the heck out of here, because you're going to become a victim, you're going to become a needy person, that utilities, which need to get everything back up and running, that I worry with a down year, that the public will then become more, it won't happen to me, it won't happen to me. Here's a question, though, is do you see that as a potential problem internally with the utilities, that, we had an off year, so we don't have to worry too much about our removal agreements, our mutual
Absolutely
aid?
not.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely
These are professionals. They wake up scared every day.
It gave us a year to breathe.
Good answer, yeah.
A little bit, and to catch up. and to fine tune some things that we want to continue to fine tune, to finish some big projects maybe that we haven't been able to get done because we've had a halt with storms coming in.
That's such a comforting answer, I got to tell you.
Oh, absolutely. I'd say that, having a year to catch up maybe makes us even more prepared because we are fine tuning things. Like, okay, gives us a chance to look back on the last 10 years even, but where can we continue to improve? What are some more investments that we can make to harden those systems, undergrounding where it makes sense, putting in stronger poles, beefing up our communications, what are those types of things? And it gives everybody a chance to look at them. But by no means are we any less prepared today than we were a year ago or 2 years ago.
And I got to believe that there's that technician somewhere who goes, we didn't get hit this year. That means we're only going to get worse next year. So I better even be more prepared.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
It's and speaking of storms, public power utilities, you guys really rock the house when it comes to storm reparations and getting us back on. Talk a little bit about, because some of your utilities are pretty small.
Yeah.
And how are they able to perform so successfully? Usually if I've got 8,000 trucks across the state, I can deploy them quickly to, if I represent a small town, Longboat Key, I'm just pulling it out of my ear. I can get there in time. I could work on them. How do the small utilities manage that? Small city utilities manage that?
FMEA serves as that mutual aid coordinator. And our members range in size from Jacksonville to Blountstown. Jacksonville's got 500,000 customers. Blountstown has 1,000 customers. Blountstown, Moorhaven, really small utilities. And FMEA is that mutual aid coordinator. So when a storm is coming or a community is impacted by a storm and they need extra help restoring power, those calls come into FMEA. And we have a very strong relationship with our national association and a mutual aid network within that association that is made up of public power utilities all across the country. And all of our member utilities in Florida operate under a mutual aid agreement that has been in place for decades now. And it is the same mutual aid agreement that these communities all across the country operate under. So we've got a very long-standing agreement in place, not just with other public power utilities. Same agreement applies to the electric cooperatives. So we instantly have this network of 1,500 utilities across the country ready and willing to come in and help us restore power. And what makes us, I would like to say, maybe a little bit, better, that's who I am. That's what I'm going to say. It's because who we represent. But, if you look at the restoration outages and the data, public power restores power 1 to 2 days faster on a county-by-county basis than other utilities because of nature of who we are. We're smaller service territories. So when we're bringing those trucks in, wherever we're bringing them in for, and let's say Blountstown was hit like they were during Hurricane Michael in 2018, their system was on the ground, right? We brought those line workers directly into Blountstown, and that's where they were. Versus maybe I'm a utility that serves the entire panhandle and I'm having to take out windshield time.
Not to be gauche about it, but if I'm a public-owned utility, I'm accountable to the voters directly and immediately, not just as customers and as voters. And if I'm a city commissioner sitting on my public power utility board, I'm worried. So I want to make darn sure, because that's the thing that people remember. If it costs 13 cents a month more to have a better mutual aid, people won't remember that. But what they will remember? They were out of Wi-Fi for 5 days or 6 days or 7 days.
Our line workers, you mentioned that community. Our utilities are part of our community. I mean, they are part of their communities. Our line workers are part of our communities for the most part. They live in the service territories in which they're performing the work. They're restoring power to their family, to their friends, to their neighbors, to their businesses.
To themselves.
That's right, to themselves. And so we've got a really strong mutual aid network and really good at what we do on that end.
That's really cool. I want to shift gears with you a little bit. My firm does represent a utility, not one of your guys, a utility authority, Fort Pierce Utility Authority, and we're moving a wastewater treatment plant. They are okay. We're helping them move the wastewater treatment plant off of Hutchinson Island, inland, right?
Yeah.
And we were talking with them because we wanted to strengthen our branding and strengthen our communications, which I want to talk to you about. And I asked a question that I should have known the answer to, but the answer came to me and it was like, oh my gosh. I mean, it was said to me by their chief communications person that it's really important to brand your utility and to develop a strong, ongoing relationship with your customers, your neighbors. And I was like, well, why? I mean, somebody might say, well, why? You're a monopoly. You know, what are they going to do? You don't have a choice. They have to. Because when something goes wrong, and invariably, whether it's due to a storm, a spillage, a line goes down, they know you and trust you. And here's the example I use, Amy. If the first time I hear about somebody is, hey, do you know Joe Smith? I don't know Joe Smith. Well, he punched somebody in the face yesterday. You think, wow, Joe's a violent person. Now, if Joe's been your best friend since high school and you've known Joe as a peaceful, honorable, decent person, and you have 1,000 data points why Joe is an honorable, peaceful person, when you hear about the punch in the face, that's the exception, not the rule. And so I think it goes without saying, but it needs to be said is we need to develop a strong and positive working relationship with our customers so that if something does go wrong, they don't lose their minds. They go, oh, I understand why this happened, and you're more trusted, you're more believable. Talk to me about the challenge that some of your members have, and what advice you would give for reaching out and strengthening those relationships with the community.
Yeah, well, first of all, Fort Pierce is our member.
Okay.
Yeah, we serve them on electric, though, right? So I just represent the electric side of our utility.
And I just represent the water.
We're the water.
Water in, water out.
So Fort Pierce Utility Authority, you are our member, absolutely. You know, we're part of our communities. We're locally owned, we're locally operated, we're locally governed. And so as public power utilities, we can tailor our programs and services to the desires of the communities. Our customers have a voice in their utility.
Oh, by the way, we talk about Fort Pierce. They have a manatee center there.
Right.
Right? You think, well, that's what the public wanted because they equate the clean water that's being used and drank and put back into the ecosystem as supporting a precious attractant, or whatever. Having a healthy Indian River Lagoon means you have healthy manatees living there. It's great for tourism, it's great for the economy, and it's great for the manatees.
That's right. You know, and things like that, that's what their community is built around. I mean, not built around the manatees, but that's important to their community, and they have it there, and they want to focus on that. And so if you're a customer of a public power utility, you have a voice in how that utility operates and particular projects and the direction that they want to take. You know, our utilities support their communities in so many ways, from hanging Christmas lights. You know, you look around Tallahassee, you know, those bucket trucks help put all those lights up.
Yeah.
And we do that all over the place.
Or let me give you another example. In 2006, when the city of Tallahassee, natural gas prices were through the roof, there was being a coal-powered plant in Taylor County, and the city suggested being a partner in that as a way to control it, to make sure they were as clean as possible. We don't like coal. I get that, right? But the city commission went to the voters and said, what do you think? Now, if you're a private utility, you don't got to go to the voters. You just got to go to the Public Service Commission, get approval, and you move forward. They had to go to the voters. And interestingly, the voters voted overwhelmingly, yes, we want to see you become a part of this.
Yeah. You know, there's all sorts of community service programs, and we give our members awards. A Building Strong Community Award is what we call it, for their customer service programs, and things such as they help light ball fields, help decorate Christmas decorations, I mentioned. They do back to school supply drives. They offer tailored customer service programs to communities for help for bill payment assistance for low-income customers. They make contributions to senior centers. They host blood drives. They do internships of local students. They host career days in local schools. And so they ingrain themselves into their community. And those things are so important, just for what you said, to build that brand. And so that when there is a problem, when there's a hurricane or some other situation, they know that their utility is their community, and it's not.
And they're more likely to trust it and allow them to do the quick work they need to do in order to get power. If it's a storm that knocks out power, it allows them to say, so people aren't losing their minds. Plus, also, if you're connected to your community, and I want to talk about that in a second in another way, because you talked about all the on-the-ground activities, that when I lose my power, I know where to go to let them know I've lost my power, and I can look at the map and say, okay, well, I see a lot of people are out. I need to be patient, and I'll have that patience. If I don't have a relationship with my utility at all, I'm like, those jerks, da, 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 and that makes life more difficult for everybody.
And even on that note, I mentioned earlier, we're locally owned, locally operated, we're locally governed. So when you go to Publix, you're going to run into one of your city commissioners. And if you're having a problem with your electric utility, you can talk to that city commissioner about it.
And they do.
Right? But that's a connection that those customers have. You know who your governing board members are for your utility. You see them, your kids play sports together, they go to school together, you see them at Publix, you see them at Walmart.
And 100%, they don't need to see somebody every single time. If you're the mayor of a small town and you see somebody just once a month who grabs you at Publix or at church or at wherever you're taking a morning walk, you're going to remember that, and you're going to be always mindful of that. And so that makes you want to do it more. And what's interesting to me as the communication world changes, right? As newspaper readership continues to cascade, local newspaper readership, people tend to get their news, air quotes, from national sources and pre-culled sources. It's incumbent more on local governments of all sorts, including your members, to find ways to constantly reach out to people through varying technologies, because Facebook, it's great. But you got to do Facebook, and you got to do Instagram, and you got to have texting services, and you have to have live operator phone or reverse 911 phone calls out to people.
Let's go back to that storm discussion we just had. A utility, and this is not just unique to us, but anybody. A utility can do a really great job, and we do a really great job collectively across the board restoring power. But if you are not proactively managing your messaging and the PR aspects of that storm and communicating with your customers via all of those channels that you just mentioned, doesn't necessarily matter how great of a job you are doing restoring power, because they're not hearing about it. Show the pictures, put the messaging out, show the damage, show the conditions that these people are working in, and that just because there's not trucks on your street, they're in all of these areas and that's happening. So managing the messaging in those types of circumstances is so important.
And I'll give you an example. For many years, the city of Tallahassee's utility bill was all wrapped up into one thing with one bottom line. And there was a myth out there that city of Tallahassee electric cost was higher than a nearby cooperative. Well, the nearby cooperative was only sending people an electric bill, where the city's bill was all of the different things from fire services to water to sewer to trash to electricity, right? But that myth persists, because once something like that gets stuck in people's brains, and under Mayor Marks, this doesn't age me at all, I guess it was 20 years ago, where they broke out the utility bill in clear terms to show, here's a fire bill. So people, and that started to calm it down. But here we are, Amy.
It's still a problem.
It's still people misperceive. I hear people say this on a regular basis, and I'm like,
it's still one of, I think, our biggest problems that we have as public power utilities, is because people get that bill in the mail, and Tallahassee's a capital. Tallahassee's one of our members. They have all these legislators in town who have rental places or they own places, and they're living in our city for a time period while the session's in, and their home is served by all these different utilities, and it may not be a public power utility, and they may get a light bill from their utility.
I love that term.
And they get a utility bill from Tallahassee, and they're like, wow, Tallahassee's utility bill is
way
so
higher.
much higher. And we FMEA does a rate comparison, by the way. We do a bill comparison. So if you go to our website, flpublicpower.com, we do monthly bill comparisons of all our member utilities and the investor-owned utilities. And we pull up the data. It's like, no, our rates are actually lower here. And years ago, when utilities had all of these different services, what customer, and I'll age myself, wants to write checks? Nobody writes checks anymore. But who wants to write a check to the city of Tallahassee 5 times for 5 different utility services?
You want it consolidated. And
right.
I wonder if the problem's got worse because...
And it saves money from the utilities.
Yeah, I no longer get a utility bill. right? We no longer get the bill that we, open it up, lay it out on the kitchen table, look at it, and fill out a check for it. It pops up on auto pay, and I just see
pay it on your bank.
On my American Express bill every month, it says, $387 City of Tallahassee utility bill. And I don't get the breakout on that. So that's got to be a new challenge as people are systematizing and automating payment, and somebody else is on a cooperative and they see 172. They're like, why is mine $100 more a month? Because it also includes garbage and water and sewer and da-da-da-da-da. And you have a pool. And, and an automatic sprinkler system that goes off 87 times a week. Of course your bill is going to cost more than the person who lives on 10 acres out in the rural area.
Yeah, so that's been a problem for decades, and it continues to be a problem.
Misperception. But that's what takes this conversation full circle by staying in touch with them, using all those channels. And the good news is there are systems that you can buy to help you consolidate your communications, so that if you want to put up a message, you write up the message and it's AI assisted. It'll push it onto your Instagram account, your Facebook account, send out an email, send out a text. And if you need a reverse 911 call, it can do the same thing. I hate calling it 911, reverse 911, but everybody knows what I'm talking about, because it doesn't have to be an emergency to call people and say, hey, we're changing service delivery, or there's an outage in your area. Please be mindful.
Yep.
We've deployed trucks. Just knowing the trucks are on their way.
They know about it, right?
Because I think the biggest anxiety gap is my power's out. Okay, what's causing it? And you walk outside, you look around, okay, my whole neighborhood's out. If I know that they know, okay, I don't like it, I hope it comes back quickly. But if I know they know, I'm like, okay, then someone's going to be coming. Yeah. Right? So that works good. Amy, I told you this would only be a half hour. We're running along because this is amazing conversation. But what is it that unifies your members? What is it? Because like you said, what do this could be a trivia percent. What do Jacksonville and Bluntstown have in common? Right? Other than they're both in Florida. Yeah. But what is the unifying field theory here about what brings it together?
It's FMEA. We are the voice of Florida Public Power. And while we have 33 different communities, and they are very, very diverse, from Bluntstown to Tallahassee to Jacksonville to Fort Pierce to Key West to Orlando to Lakeland to Bushnell, they are unified when they are operating together under one voice within FMEA. And so it's the trade association. We provide opportunities for them to network with each other, to learn from each other, to share best practices with each other. We just did a little, we're kind of gathering some data internally. We do member surveys. So if the city of Bluntstown wants to know how other small communities are doing ABC, what are you using, or what vendor you're using, or how do you do this? And we send out a survey and we get those answers and collect them. And so in the last, I think it was 5 months, 6 months, we did more than 30 member surveys at the request of member utilities for each other.
Wait, 30 separate surveys?
Yes.
Okay.
Because that's how much
they're that connected.
Yep.
See, I love that, because that was not the answer I expected. Let me tell you what the answer I expected was. I almost expected a little bit of kind of like the Pollyannish, well, we're all connected by service and we love our communities. And that's all true. And they're close. And we talked about it. You're walking through Publix. That's your Publix. Yeah. You need to get power restored. That's your neighbor. And so that is the unifying feature to me. But your point is they're unified by with each other. Yeah. And that's really kind of a cool thing.
FMEA has been around since 1942. And our founders had that vision, and that was why we came together. It was actually initially because of during World War II, when there were fuel shortages, and we joined together to have unified interests and that collective group together. And so we have expanded from that, and that's the benefit of working together within one voice.
Oh, that's fantastic. Last question, I promise. Let's look back a year from today. This podcast, which we're launching today, this is the inaugural edition, is successful if?
It is successful if we have the listenership, if we are able to communicate the good work that our member utilities are doing and amplify their messages.
And how would you measure that? When you go to a conference, people come up to you and say,
and they're going to talk
"Thank you
about
for
it.
that."
They're going to, hey, I heard your podcast on such and such, or we get a call or we get an email from either another employee or one of our vendor companies says, hey, you had a great podcast from so-and-so at this utility. I'd love to reach out to them and find out more about that. Or can you help me get engaged and get involved in one of your conferences? Because I want to hear more about that.
I love when people say, I have an idea for the podcast too, is I listen to your podcast on a regular basis. I have a thought about what can be on it. That's when you know they're using this tool, because what I love about it, you have the magazine. And I know you have emails because I receive them. And I'm sure you also have personal emails you send out when communication, Zoom calls, conference calls, in-person conferences. In the world we live in, you have to have a diversified communications because everybody receives. It's choice and variety. How we receive and consolidate our sources of information. Podcast is just another way to do it.
That's right.
Well, Amy, thanks for having me as your host. I love this. I love talking to you.
Thanks for doing this.
I love your brilliance and your passion.
We're excited about this. I really am. I'm looking forward to what the next year will bring.
Well, folks, this is Steve Vancore. Thank you so much for listening. You've been listening to the Florida Public Powercast. By the way, what a great name, the Florida Public Powercast. And it's brought to you by FMEA, the Florida Municipal Electric Association, your statewide voice for public power. Thanks for joining us.